I'll just start recording. Just making sure.
Yay. Hello.
Hang on, I haven't. Right, I'm just making sure I was recording, because if the other person starts recording before me, it shows us that it
I screwed it up.
In. That's fine. Hello, everyone.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good evening, almost.
Yeah. Hey, where does the time go? Honestly, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's every day. Like you wake up Monday morning and then literally it's Sunday, or a few days later. Like it's just goes so fast.
It does, doesn't it? It seems to me that time's really going quickly at the moment. We spoke a few months ago, and you were talking about things happening in the summer, and then all of a sudden the summer was there, and I don't know what's happened to all the time in between. But how are things for you in Australia, David?
It's interesting. So basically, Victoria, where I used to live, is state in the eastern states. They just went into they had a situation over there, so they went into a 7-day snap house arrest, and it actually obviously coincided with the march yesterday, which was cancelled in that city, and so some people still go, and I saw a video of somebody who's quite big in the truth community over there and in Australia itself, and he was posting a video of police pepper spraying people, and this was after it had finished as well, and then I saw these people running in with cameras, and lo and behold, those photos were in the paper today here. So, is that a setup to you? It sounds like a setup to me, because how on earth would they know where to be?
Yeah. It's weird, isn't it? I must just say, before we go much further, I always forget to do my introduction, but I've got my new website up and running where I can put uncensored videos. So depending how this conversation goes, if there's only a snippet on YouTube, please go to the link below in the description below and you can find the full video. Just saves me having to do an intro. That's really interesting, isn't it, David? Because we had the freedom protest for the second one in 2 weeks yesterday up in London, and it were quite a few of my friends went. I went to the one 2 weeks ago, but didn't go yesterday. And apparently, yet again, it was amazing. With so many people there, completely peaceful. So the last two ones in London have been very, very peaceful. The police have really behaved themselves. The demonstrators have really behaved themselves. But Rachel, did you notice? I actually saw a few pictures of this one for yesterday's on the mainstream media. Was 2 weeks ago. It was complete. Nothing was mentioned about it in any of the papers, any of the media, even though one of the main areas they went to protest for was outside the BBC buildings, and we were outside there for a good hour. There was still complete media silence on it. But I thought it was a bit encouraging that a few pictures of yesterday have made it into the media.
Yeah, no, I think a little bit more truth is coming out now. And I remember a question with Janine with regards to the demonstrations, the peaceful demonstrations. And she said that the one towards the end of the month was going to be a biggie in terms of waking up more people. So, I mean, it's just nice to see, even if it's just 2% of a bit of truth actually coming out, but at least there is something now in that sense. And it's so nice when people actually physically gather, and just to be able to see, massive people without any flipping masks or nappies. It's just, it's heartwarming compared to where you go shopping, etc. And it's just this bombardment of nappy wearing people, and they just look at you like you're completely insane for not wearing one. But I do not comply. Absolutely not. No chance. But yeah, it is nice to see.
And they're really pushing that. Obviously, they've got, whenever they have a 7-day or a 5-day or whatever it is, 3 days, they push that nappy mandate as well. And it's just crazy. Of all the things that you would quote unquote protect your health with, why that? It's so odd. Obviously we know that's not the reason why they do it, but it just makes no sense. And people just lap it up though. What I've really noticed, and I've been talking to some of my subscribers, in Telegram and stuff like that, who live in that state, and just they're kind of lost for words, just how compliant people are and how people just aren't getting it. I've been posting a lot on Facebook recently, and people they're just parroting the mainstream narrative. People saying, oh yeah, BBC is a good source of information, Fox is a terrible source of information, and it's crazy how manipulated people are. And actually, what I wanted to ask you about the stats and the science and stuff, because I know when I sent that email, I had a comment on one of my post. Somebody was saying that they're in science, and what I did basically was I posted a screenshot, or not a screenshot, some stats of the TGA, which is the Therapeutic Goods Administration here, which is our version of the CDC. And they had a number of CV deaths for the year up until, from start of the year till now, which is 1. And then the number of deaths after having the shot, which is 210. And then the number of adverse reactions, which is, I think it was 22,031, if I remember correctly. And so somebody was saying, oh, I'm in science, you got to actually look at these figures in the right way. And I go, okay, that kind of makes sense. So that's why I sent the email. I was like, how would you look at these figures? Are there many different ways? And then after I sent the email, I got a response I said, well, how would you interpret this? And basically she said, well, all those people, and it said on the website, pretty much all the people that died, they're all like in nursing homes and really old. So that's the reason for it. I'm like, well, okay, then why don't you carry that same logic over to CV? Why is it not the shots? Why isn't the shot to blame when these people are passing away because they're old? Yet when they get CV, it's a completely different story,
I think you've raised a really good point. And I've been looking at the stats loads and loads and loads. And also, I would really encourage anyone who's interested into the science side of things to sign up to Dr. Robert O. Young's newsletter, because he's putting some brilliant information out in his newsletters where he's really going into the stats a lot. But what I get the same issue from some of my scientific friends, but people are so, Rachel and I were just speaking about this before you came on camera, people are so determined to show it from their point of view. So the CDC and the normal reporting, the yellow card system in the UK and the sort of adverse reaction reporting in the USA is very well established for vaccine injuries. They've done loads of studies at some very eminent universities that have shown that, generally speaking, only 1% of adverse reactions are actually recorded. Yeah. So I know loads of people who've got vaccine damaged children, and to get your child's stat actually officially recorded is just virtually impossible. It really is, because it's so difficult for a medical professional to actually admit that the vaccine is to blame, because they'll do everything they can to blame it on something else. So what we're saying here is a complete distortion of the data, as you said, where the whole of the last year and a half, they've been saying anyone who tested positive and died within 28 days of a positive test has died of COVID. And so the figures have been up through the roof, because we all know how false the COVID test is. Whereas actually on the vaccine, they're trying to say, oh, no, it's nothing to do with the vaccine, it's just a coincidence. And so you've completely ruined the logic. And it just shows how deep down, to me, that scientist deep down knows there's a problem. Because if you're fighting, any reputable scientist would be able to look at that and say, hang on a minute, there's something wrong here. And if you're fighting so much for your limitation, to actually not admit that, oh my gosh, there could be a problem here, then deep down in that person's heart, my interpretation would be they know there's something wrong. Because science, when someone dies in an old people home, for example, well, one, they hadn't died of COVID in that time. And there's a brilliant email, I'll forward it on to you afterwards, where Dr. Robert O. Young sent out yesterday, and he's looked at all the stats from the World Health Organization of the way that the death rates have gone up after the vaccinated in all the highly vaccinated countries. And it was a lot of countries, like Brazil, about this. Yeah. I hadn't even looked at. And it's absolutely shocking. It's completely damning. But of course, none of that is being reported on the mainstream media. So I'm having these conversations with loved ones, as I know Rachel is, as I know you are. And the trouble is, they're not seeing the data. But there's something in their mentality. If someone said that to me, I might, you might sort of not want to, if your sister's telling it to you, you might sort of not want to agree with your sister on principle, but then you'd sneak away later on and have a look, wouldn't you? Because surely it would raise that doubt. And what could be more important to people? But if you've already had it, you wouldn't want to go and look at those stats, would you?
It's a bit like a frog in the boiling water, isn't it? It's that simmer, 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 drop, drop, drop for the last 20 years since aeroplanes went into a building in America. And it's a bit like a huge dominoes effect, isn't it? And unless you actually go out and actually search for things, I think that they're trying to be kind of blatant, but with commonsensical kind of actions in the MSM. I mean, just before coming on here, I did Google it. Well, it wasn't Google, it was DuckDuckGo. But it said that 66.6% of the population had been Jabberwocked. And,
In
you
the
know,
UK,
it's just,
or
yeah. So 66, you know, it's the 666. You know,
Yeah.
how more blatant do they have to be? And I remember sharing something on Facebook, which was there were 33 new cases found, and this was right at the beginning of it. And every single area of the UK was reporting 33 new cases, 33 new cases.
Yeah.
And it's so blatantly obvious, but they seem to go ahead with it. You know, they seem to understand. But then, you know, so COVID, whether something was actually released or not, I'm not sure. And then the PCR, you know, then that's another fake. And then there's the PCR results, another fake. And then there's the, you know, the stats on people dying and hospitals being overrun, completely fake. And people being arrested for going in and actually videoing and showing people that these hospitals are completely empty. And then rolls out, you know, this huge, amazing, you know, cure, which is not a cure. And it's
an experiment.
unbelievable.
I don't get it. Like, I have a friend who I told him not to get it so many times last year. And I said, you know, they've indemnified the manufacturers. If something happens to you or your family, because he has a family, nothing, you can't do anything about it. Anyway, I get a message from him a couple of weeks ago, voice message. Got some exciting news. I just got it. I got the AZ, and the reason I got it so quick is because nobody wants it, so I got to skip the line. I was like, isn't that a damning admission that nobody wants it? Like, isn't that enough? I told you not to get it. I didn't say that to him, but and then like a week later, he goes, "Hey, what's in it?" I was like, "Don't you think you would have looked that up beforehand?" And I said, "I don't know exactly what's in it, but here's one thing I do know that's in it." And I said this, and it's a whole pile of numbers and letters, right? And basically what it comes down to is like an aborted baby fetus or something, right?
Yeah.
And then there are other things in it too. I said, but here's some other ingredients and some common ingredients of other ones, you know, like aluminium, formaldehyde, mercury, you know, pig's heart, and you know, all these crazy stuff. And the next question floored me. I'm like, you know, you'd think you'd be a little bit worried about it at that point, but his next question was, but it works, right? I was like, you are kidding me. Actually, I said, no, it doesn't work. It's a test. You signed up for a test. If, you know, it may work, it may not work, but in fact, the studies show that it's not working right now. So yeah, I didn't hear from him.
The trouble is that, David, they're trying to show the data to show it is working. But the question is working against what? Because working against something that for his age group, there was a really, really good video. I'm going to put a link to a lot of these videos on my new website, because there was a really, really good video of one of the mums in the UK. Can't remember if I sent it to you, Rachel, that beautifully went through the stats in terms of in all the different age groups, because there's a huge outroar in the UK now because they're rolling it out to children, or at the moment now they're calling in all the 18-year-olds upwards. But when they go back in September, they've made a new rule that secondary school children, which in the UK means, I think it's from 12 onwards, 12 to 18, they can now have the jab without their parental consent. So this mother had done this brilliant video, and she went through, and, you know, for anyone up until 70 years of age, the chances of the survival rate, even if you get it, were 99.9997 or something. You know, I don't quote me on that, for each age group. And she'd gone through it really clearly for each age group. So it's like, what on earth would you even consider having it for anyway? but it is fascinating because people are, you know, you've got to look at the why are they wanting it? Because over here, whether that stat, as Rachel said, you have to laugh, 66.6%. But Rachel and I were talking, and virtually everyone we know has had it.
Right.
At least one shot, adults. And you're thinking, actually, unfortunately, I do, because they could be overestimating the number of people who've had it. But based on our own personal experience and everyone we speak to who says the same, all of us are saying virtually everyone we know has had it. So I actually don't think they're inflating the numbers of it. But there's two really good interviews I'm going to put links to, and I'll send them to you afterwards, David. There's did you hear the Kerry Cassidy with Dr. Robert O. Young and Dr. Judy Mikovich interview from this week?
No.
Absolutely brilliant. And they go through a lot of the science behind it really, really well for anyone who's interested in the science. But there was also another interview, I'm trying to think who it was from, it would come to me in a minute, where they're saying that actually, even though they've identified them, if the lawyers in the legal case can show that they knew what they were doing with the vaccine, then those identifications don't work, so they can be prosecuted.
Okay.
So a lot of the legal teams are starting to look now that, you know, it is a population cull, and if they can prove that will wipe out those. But I don't know, it's a really hard one, isn't it? Because once people have had it, what do you say to them? Because is it in their best interest to then tell them that they've made a terrible mistake? Possibly not, because then they'll go into even more of a fear state and might manifest a bad reaction from it. What do you reckon?
Well, that's why I didn't say anything afterwards, you know. He asked me the ingredients, I gave him that. I didn't say anything after that. He hasn't had the second one yet because it's a few weeks away, and that's up to him. Like, you know, I tried my best, you know, like I told him so many times last year, you know, not to do it, and for different reasons. And, you know, not for the fact that, like you say, it's a 99.7% survival rate. And that's if you take the figures that they've given you. The real figures are far higher survival rate than that, because you know that most of those deaths aren't even CV deaths anyway. So,
yeah. But then, you know,
therapeutics to treat them and didn't use them. So that to me is the biggest red herring. I don't know what you think, Rachel, but the fact that there's so much evidence that people have been using some of these known therapeutic pharmaceutical drugs that have been approved for over 50 years, like ivermectin, like hydroxychloroquine, and there's loads more that I don't know about. And the fact that they've been absolutely stopped from using them says it already. What else does someone need to know to show that it's an agenda?
They banned them both here in April last year. Sorry,
I know, it's horrendous.
Like a month after we went into the whole world did it, it was banned, you know, in April. So
yeah, but then they've indoctrinated everybody, haven't they, from a very early onset, that the pharmaceutical is the way to go, and the natural cures essentially you can't say that they cure or that they, you know, aid or assist in certain things. Yeah, it is the best way to go, and it's the best way to alkalize your body. But then, you know, maybe the figures are more correct in the 99.97, because a lot of people go to McDonald's, you know. You know, I mean, just the queues around this area of the country in the UK for people queuing to get into McDonald's is disgusting from all hours of the day. It's incredible. It's diabolical. Yeah. But it comes back to that kind of the natural way is always so much better. But people just don't understand that, you know. And you look around a supermarket, or do you call them supermarkets, or in Australia? So, you know, you can bet that 97% of all that stuff in there is actually acidic to the body. So if we are walking around kind of almost time bombs to a certain extent, you know, with what they give us, but there is so much to learn from the natural way of things, and it's much better for you, obviously, the natural way. But oopsie daisy. Yeah.
I've got one bit of good news, guys, for you on this. I just slightly off target, but listen to this. My mum sent me this message late last night, and it was really wonderful because my mum's really into natural health. You know, she's in it. So unfortunately, my father died last year of cancer, and she gets all the leaflets through from Cancer Research UK asking for money, and she's always read them. And she said literally this, she said, I've just received my latest letter asking me to donate to cancer research, but a real difference this year. This year, they've added a sentence saying in the leaflet, has your doctor explained to you what a difference the correct diet can make to your health? Do you know that you shouldn't eat red meat more than a couple of times a week? Now that, it might sound really insignificant, but it's such a huge step forward, isn't it? Because up until literally when my father was going through his cancer, and my mother and I managed to get him along to a consultant doing a nutrition and cancer, and it was packed, you know, there were 200 people in this room before COVID. And the chief professor of oncology said there's absolutely no link between diet and cancer, and it makes no difference at all, and make sure you have loads of dairy, which we know is really bad for cancer. But the fact they've put that this year in their thing, I think I'm celebrating small wins, you know, because it is a step forward.
I would say two sides of the coin, because there are reports now, whether this is true or not, that the Jabberwocky is, you know, what all these magnets and things that they're sticking to people's arms, that it is actually stealing the body's iron. So that maybe they're asking people to have less iron now in their body, in their actual diet, and people are reporting lots of blood clots, which is the lack of, so when you cut yourself, your blood clots, and that is, you know, it's your body trying to heal itself. And what this is doing is it's essentially, I suppose, building an army inside your body to a certain extent. And whether this is true, I'm not quite sure, and I don't want to fearmonger, but people, you know, the blood clotting is potentially something linked to the iron in our blood. And so if they're now recommending a diet with less iron, you know,
Rachel, you can get much more iron from loads of vegetables than you can from meat.
Yes, broccoli, all sorts of different things. And tofu, I discovered is quite high, although I don't like tofu. But yeah, that's quite high in iron as well. But yeah, I do think, you know, that people should definitely be eating less meat. And it's for me, it's more down to kind of the soul of the animal, you know, and the atrocities that happen with the adrenaline inside the body before, you know, before.
Yeah, but at least it's a good bit. You know, it's the first time that sort of where there's been an acknowledgement on the conventional side of things.
Yeah,
that it's important. David, one question I really wanted to ask you, again, Rachel and I were talking about this earlier, is we were saying there's this fine line, isn't there, about, for people, we all say to everyone, do your own research, but equally, if you do your own research, you don't want to spend your whole life locked in front of your computer. You want to be getting people out, living a life, living a healthy life, being out in nature, you know, being with their loved ones, etc. So for me, there's a fine line between doing enough research to sort of understand the bigger picture, but also getting on and living your life and making sure you are living in the moment and enjoying the current times. What do you think about that? Because it's very hard. Everyone's been told, do your own research, but we all know people that literally spend their whole life in front of a computer for the last year.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've kind of spent my whole life in front of a computer for the last 5 years or something, ever since I started a business, and many other reasons why. But no, I do agree with you in that respect. I'm actually thinking about it, you know, a few days ago. I'm really looking forward to kind of, as I'm sure everybody is, you know, to getting our lives back, you know what I mean? Because not only are we not able to do a lot of things like travel and stuff, and sometimes we're not even able to go out to the bar or whatever, you know, if we want to do that in some countries, in some cities. Yeah, I think because it's such a never-ending hole, you can do as much research as you want. You can never do enough almost sometimes. But I do think that at the same time as all this stuff is going on, is yes, do some research, but also don't be so, you you know, don't be waiting for anything to happen, if that makes sense. Like, get on with your life. And if you have aspirations of starting a business or learning a new skill, or if you want to, you know, go and do that. You know, don't wait for, like, I've been wanting to, you know, do music on YouTube for a very long time, and I've only just started doing it recently. But and I think that's a good example of that, you know, because I could just wait and go, well, you know, I'm doing the, you know, the truth stuff, and I've got my own stuff to do it, you know, for work and stuff, for clients and stuff. But if I don't get the ball rolling in that area, it's never going to start, right? So I think it's very easy for people to get stuck into the, you know, into all the truth stuff, because there's just literally so much there to look at, and to sift through it all and figure out what's real and what's not takes time and a lot of discernment. But no, I think you make a good point. You know, we should all be living our life as much as we can, you know, in this time, because we, you know, tomorrow is never promised, right? You know, we never know what's going to happen. So yeah.
Have you I was just going to ask, have you noticed a difference in your community at all during all this, since March last year?
Nah, I wouldn't say so. Only because it's hard to say, you know, because our community, like when I go to the supermarket, for instance, you know, a few months ago, we had our mask, you know, thing, and people were all wearing them. So I haven't noticed much of a change in that area. And I think that's one of the biggest ways you can notice a change, isn't it? Because it's like everything is on display. Your beliefs are on display when you put that on. Your vibration is on display when you put that on. So it's difficult to.
We're losing you a bit, Dave. We just lost you then.
Yeah, you did freeze a little bit. It should be okay now. But basically, I said that when you go to the shop and everyone's wearing a nappy, I think that's a good indicator of whether you can see things changing or not. And to answer your question, I haven't seen that yet. So
no, I think we might have been in a worse situation in this country. I suppose we've had to wear nappies since last year, and so we've been in lockdown. It felt like forever. So, you know, and a lot of places still aren't open, or they've gone bust, or, you know, because they're just trying to shut down the middle class and you know, make poverty for worse and worse throughout the whole country. But I think in the UK, people have seen differences, you know, with neighbours being more aware of who and where they are, and trying to help out their neighbours, etc., which I thought was really lovely at the start, you know, because people were starting to talk more to each other. And you know, that the kind of the image of the wives kind of hanging over each other's fence with their aprons on, or whatever they were doing, and hanging up their washing, and then having a good old chin wag, which is what we say in the UK. But I think there was a lot more of that, and has happened recently over this, since March last year, which I thought was really nice. But I think it also depends on the desperateness of you know, the way in which the community also works, and helping those elderly.
Can I say on that, I've almost noticed the opposite. So, and it's really disappointed me. My husband and I were talking about this yesterday. So at the start of the lockdown, everyone got like a local community WhatsApp group, and we were very focused on helping the elderly people out, and people who were happy to still go shopping. Like we didn't care about going to the supermarket, but some of our neighbours were like, I'm not going into a supermarket, it's too risky. So people were getting each other shopping for them and things. And we were seeing a lot more of people, because where we live, it's very much commuter belt. So a lot of people live in the countryside and commute up to London or the big cities for work. And so you never saw them, because people left at 6 o'clock in the morning and got back at 7 o'clock at night. So for a while, everyone was working from home. And so you could see more of each other, and people made a lot more effort. But over the last 3 months, I've really noticed that what's happened is that contact has completely disappeared. And even though a lot of people are still working from home, they're now just spending all day in front of their computer, and they're not talking to each other again. So they've settled into what I would say the old habits in the new situation. And I found that really fascinating to see how quickly people have gone back to those old ways. So even though they're still, like a lot of my neighbours are still not going into their office, my husband has been throughout, but now they're just stuck in front of their desk morning, noon and night at home and not speaking to people again. It's showing me that we're not evolving through this. And you know how everyone said this is going to force everyone to change? And I do agree with you, Rachel. We saw that where we live a lot to begin with in the first 6 months, and then it dwindled off very quickly. But I don't see these sort of lasting behaviour things. Even us saying in the UK that we have to wear masks, well, people like you and me have never worn one. So it's, what is this definition of have to? Because we're still here, we're not locked up yet. You know, we've chosen to not do it, and they haven't enforced it. I went shopping yesterday for the first time in about well over 6 months, as in went into the clothes shops. And there's one shop I went into and they didn't say anything about a mask. Most of the shops you're not allowed to try anything on, but this one you could do. And then when I've been in the shop for 10 minutes, then when I went to go into the changing room with my daughter, they're like, oh, have you got a mask? And both of us weren't wearing one. And I'm like, I've been walking around for 10 minutes without one. No, I haven't. And they just said, oh, okay, and went in. But what I did notice, which I was horrified about, was most of the shops were not accepting cash now.
Yeah.
So whereas when I went 6 months ago, because that's the last time I went in to do some non-food shopping, even though they had signs up saying card payment preferred, they were still accepting cash. Was yesterday, virtually all the shops, not all, but I would say a good 90% of them would not accept cash. You physically couldn't pay cash. And I said to this lady at the till, I said, oh my God, it's disgusting, isn't it? And she actually said to me, she said, I know, it's really concerning. I'm really concerned about it. She said, but there's absolutely nothing we can do, because this was a chain of, you know, it wasn't her shop. She was just the manager of that particular branch. And she actually said to me, she said, yeah, it's awful, but there's nothing we can do. We have no facility now to accept cash at this shop.
That's crazy. Wow. We did the same thing here.
Worrying,
in big supermarkets. They banned it, cash, for a while, but then there was a backlash, and they you know, backtracked on that ban. But you can, you know, it's crazy, isn't it? You can see people look. I've been saying the cash thing for a long time, and people go, no, that'll never happen, and it's happening. And and you just kind of wonder, like, they use CV as the excuse. Well, it could be on the cash, right? But come on, you know.
Yeah, apart from those awful pin pads where they've done trials years ago. They did this in pubs, and they sort of showed that there were more germs on the keypads of a card machine than there were on a toilet seat. But, you know, but then of course we're all right, because there's this toxic hand sanitizer. I wanted to go back to both of you two and ask, so David, you've been really good now, and you've pushed yourself, and you started to get your music out, and Rachel, you're a passionate gardener now, aren't you? Real gardener. How does it feel, David, now you've started to do something that you're so passionate about?
Well, it feels great. I mean, I've been working towards doing the YouTube for a while now, and, you know, working on my skills and things like that, and also working against my own mind, you know what I mean? Because that's the only reason why I didn't do it in the first place. But it's funny you should ask, because I just released a cover this morning, and of a Billie Eilish song. And as you may or may not know, Billie Eilish is, like most big stars, you know, they have to push the agenda, you know. And I got one comment from someone asking, you know, why would you cover a song by someone who's in the club, whatever. And, you know, she has a good point, but at the same time, who isn't going to be in it? I don't know, you know, like, I don't know everyone that's in it. And, you know, a lot of these people are victims too, you know?
Yes.
And, you know, so it makes it very difficult. But to answer your question, it feels great, you know, to be able to actually put out music now. And I've started writing my own music and recording that. So, yeah.
That's so lovely.
At the end, please do. And Rachel, you've you know, been through a circumstance where you moved, and the move was taking you into the most amazing place in the countryside, not
Yeah.
planned, was it? You didn't consciously do that. And what you've actually got there is quite incredible now, isn't it? With you growing all your own vegetables and everything.
It just shows you, you know, when the rug is pulled from underneath your feet, you either go with it and trust it and know that, you know, something incredible is going to happen as a consequence even. So I've 7 o'clock this morning, I had a delivery of 6 tons of manure, mature manure, for my veggies. But, you know, and I'm able to share all my vegetables and asparagus, you know, asparagus has gone crazy. We've got all the bees and everything. So, you know, there's so much to be grateful for. And I can then go around and I am sharing it with my neighbours. And there is a real community kind of aspect to it. And my dad and I, we do go around and talk to other people in the vicinity, which is so nice. And I don't live in the same house as my parents, but it's just so lovely to be in the same area. And we've got the tractors and we've got the chickens, and, you know, it's this kind of the good life to a certain degree. And I'm swapping manure for vegetables on a weekly basis, you know, and then my other neighbour has wheelbarrows, etc. So yeah, but it's so lovely to have that community aspect, and I feel like I really want to kick this off, and I'm trying to, you know, spill a little bit more and a little bit more about what's happening. And it was actually interesting yesterday having a conversation with one of my neighbours that they tried to take the money out of their big colossal bank and try and put it into a local kind of little bank, but they wouldn't allow them to do it. And they were really shocked. And I was thinking, you know, at least people are kind of understanding that this system is all upside down. It's this tipsy-toesy. So that was really lovely. Although they were very frustrated with it, you know, but they are starting to open their eyes, I think, to a certain extent. And I hope the timelines, you know, you never can trust timelines. And I was saying, you know, well, between kind of 4 to 6 weeks, it might get worse before it gets better. But I think, you know, a lot of information will be known by that point. So it's kind of little drips of information that I'm trying to give to them. But especially, I definitely share your avid love for music, David, because I did my music technology for my at university. So it is so nice to also share in that music thing, and I'd love to do kind of drumming circles and things here as well, because we've got the field, so it would be a perfect environment for it. But you know, that coming together and actually creating creating magic in so many different ways, you know, there's and people have so many different passions, and it's just lovely to have it all come together in different ways.
I've discovered quite a few local healers. So a few of us put a thing about doing a local meditation group, and I was sort of offering, saying, well, if people want to do it with animals, they're more than welcome to come, because one of my horses' fields is just so idyllic. It's just beautiful. And for me, it's my favorite place to meditate. And when you're meditating with animals around you, it's just such a wonderful energy. So I was speaking to someone locally about that, and one of them has, you know, got their drums, and someone else does sound healing and things. So we're looking at introducing that. And that's what really sort of made me think about, you know, really these people, just like you were saying, David, you've got your music channel up and running now. It's just get on and do your passions now, and don't wait, because it's almost like once you know what's coming, those are people that have got quite a good awareness of what we think is going on. It's quite tempting for a lot of people to say, I'll do it when this happens, I'll do it when that happens. And that's not going to get any of us anywhere. You know, we've got to get on and do it now. It's like anyone who's done anything about manifesting, when it really kicks in and really starts to work energetically, is when you live like it's already happened now. You'll not keep pushing it forward to the future. So I'm really excited. I'm going to be going and having a look at your music after this. You can play one at the end for us, David.
Yeah, I could. Although it won't come through the speakers, because it's
we'll do that next time. We'll introduce with one of those and everything, because that is really lovely, and we'll obviously put the link to that underneath. So I think it really uplifts you, doesn't it? I think it's what it shows is all of us have got our passions, and the more time we spend doing them, it's very difficult when things are so serious as they are now. And also, when you can see so many other people around you really suffering, it can be hard, can't it? Not to almost feel like you shouldn't be happy and doing these joyful things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because yeah, it does. It's because there is so much suffering going on right now. You know, I've seen a lot of videos in London of people going around the city and just all the businesses that are closed, and the same thing's happening here because Victoria and Melbourne, they got hit really hard with their lockdowns, and you know, the in and out of it, and you know, people just can't survive. And I think one of the biggest questions that people need to ask themselves, and even our Prime Minister said, well, that the solution can't be worse than the problem, you know, like, and it absolutely has been, you know, but in so many ways. But people aren't really asking themselves that question. They're kind of just focusing on what the media is telling them and how many people are supposedly dying from this thing, and they're not thinking about the businesses and the livelihoods and the domestic abuse and the drug and alcohol abuse and, you know, all the other stuff that's going along with it, and the mental health crisis that we're having. You know, they're just not thinking about that, unfortunately. Well, I'm sure some people are, but you know, most people aren't. You know,
suppressed, completely and utterly suppressed.
And they're not giving people practical solutions of what they can do. You know, we all know that just throwing money at things, and you know, for people that have furlough payments and things, it's not the solution. It's not the solution when you feel that your hope and your aspirations have been taken away from you. I particularly feel very sorry for the sort of, you know, older teenagers who are looking at what they want to do with their lives, and suddenly they're thinking, oh my God, a lot of the options I thought I was going to do have just been wiped out overnight. But I think, you know, joy is contagious. And I think when people see someone else following their dreams, it's much easier to then help someone else to start doing something that they can feel really joyful about in their daily life and take some of the long-term worries. Because as you said a little while ago, David, you know, tomorrow isn't for granted, and we've got no idea. We don't know what those above us are going to put in place. But don't you think the disclosure is starting? I mean, we're seeing a lot on the news about now the investigations into was it created in the Wuhan lab? We're seeing a lot about Anthony Fauci. We've got the Bill Gates ridiculous divorce, but you know, it's still putting him into the news in a different light.
And Epstein, his connections to Epstein as well.
Yeah, and everything. So are you quite hopeful that this is a really good sign that we're starting to see this drip of disclosure?
It's certainly looking that way. And I really do hope this is the start of the avalanche, because you know, sometimes things appear in the media and then they just get forgotten about, you know. So I'm really hoping that's not the case here. I really do hope that once the two big players, you know, the CEO of Microsoft and the little weasel in the US doctor, once those two are exposed, that's kind of at the beginning of the end. And I think we're already starting to see it. So once that happens, then the whole CV is exposed. And then once that happens, the shot's also, you know, in the limelight too, isn't it? So
yes, let's
just hope that June is that what Janine says it is, and it's going to be that month where we start to see the big, you know, it seems to be moving that direction. What do you guys think?
Well, there's the I suppose in the media there was the Evergreen event that happened, wasn't there? But I know that from some sources and good friends that the I suppose packages or the what do you call them, the containers. The containers are what used to be £5,000 worth of. I suppose you'd pay £5,000 per container. Now, coming through the same route, they're now charging 50,000. So, you know, it's going to make that part of the business, to have a shipping container come through the same route is going to cost, you know, a lot more. So from 5,000 to 50,000, it makes that part of the world then not as lucrative in terms of profit, etc., for companies in different areas. So we may see, you know, a surge in prices for whether it's furniture, food, accessories, all the rest of it, I think things will start changing in that sphere from taking, and it's, that area of the world where there is, more slave labor to a certain extent in some cases. I'm not sure, but it's going to change things, potentially for the better, potentially for the worst. I'm not sure, but I think things are changing in the world. And then the little bits of information. I think you're totally right with regards to the weasels, Dr. Weasel. Quite like that name for him, actually. It's quite fitting, isn't it?
Weasels.
Well, it's not very nice with weasels. Any kind of animal.
Yeah, it's a big insult to weasels. Yeah.
I'll start a weasel counselling society for the real weasels. Do you think that's going to really make people buy more local again? Because again, we you're buying food from all over the world, and we all know what sort of preservatives have to be put in it to make it actually survive that journey. I'm wondering whether, yes, this is going to hike up inflation and cost of goods massively, but it might force people again to go and use their local farmers and support their local businesses, because they won't be able to afford to buy in all this imported stuff.
Yeah. I don't know what route they take in Australia, David.
Oh, me either. But the thing I would like to know, actually, the answer to, and this maybe could be a question for Janine next time you speak to her, is because there are so few companies controlling so much of the produce and products that we buy. You've got, it's like 10 companies that could pretty much do most of the food in the world. You've got 6 companies that do the media. You've got not just that, but you've got companies like Unilever who have a hand in everything. They do cosmetics and things like that. They also do food too. And I'm wondering, obviously all that money is going to a small number of people, right? That's how it's been set up. I wonder how what's going to happen, because those people, I would assume, if what we think is going to come down the line happens, I would assume those people are probably going to be in jail or executed at some point, right? I would like to know what's going to happen to the profits of those companies. What could be cool, and this may not be. I was thinking about this, because obviously there's so much money in the world. Everybody could have an amazing life if that money was. Imagine if all the profits from those companies were redistributed to the people. Because those companies, the people that own the trusts that the profits go to, I would imagine are going to be defunct. So imagine if the profits go to the people, then on one hand it'd be great because we wouldn't have to work, but on the other hand, society would fall apart. So I think that we still need to do the work. There's going to be so much work to do, extra things that we didn't even think of to usher us into the new world and beyond. But imagine. You know what I mean? Like, imagine what we could achieve if we had that money and it wasn't just stuck in a trust that the Pazer family trust, as far as I'm aware, was the biggest trust in the world. It had $34 quadrillion in it. That's what I imagine most of the money's going.
Well, I've noted that. That's a really good question for our Wednesday chat with her. It's interesting, isn't it? Because we always think that technology is a good thing and advances are a good thing, but I was discussing one of my other chats with someone else. The reality is the way most people in the Western world, in the developed world, I'm not talking about people that are still living in poverty in other areas of the world, but the lifestyle that we've been forced into to do ours, we call it a 9-to-5 job. I know very few people that just work 9 to 5. I mean, I think that is a fallacy in itself. It's normally a lot longer in hours like that. If you've got a family, both parents have to work just to make ends meet in most families, etc. And as a consequence, we're now the unhealthiest generations that we've ever had in human history. So my children's life expectancy is less than mine because of all the health issues they're having, because of the lifestyle, the food and everything else. And actually, you know, getting back out and doing physical work, as you found recently, Rachel, with, you know, with growing your own veg, building your own garden. And not everyone can have their own veg, but as Rachel's saying, well, someone's got manure and someone's got wheelbarrows and someone is a carpenter and can mend something and someone else is a plumber and can do that. So there's bartering and exchanging of goods. But getting back to this more practical, what we would call old-fashioned way of living, I mean, when I grew up, I'm old enough to remember that the parents, you know, when I was a young child, we didn't have big supermarkets, and it was a full-time job for a mother to run the household and cook and feed and wash and everything, because you didn't have dishwashers, you didn't have big supermarkets, you had to go to the butcher and the greengrocers and the hardware store and everything. It was a full-time job, sort of running the house and garden and everything. But they were so fit. You know, you look around us now, there's an epidemic of obesity, there's an epidemic of depression, there's an epidemic of being addicted to pharmaceutical medications and everything. And it hasn't done us a lot of these advances. Some have, of course, there's been some amazing advances that have saved lots of life, but a lot of them haven't. And it's quite funny because I've always had the mickey taken out of me, as Rachel knows, because I've got all the animals and I'm always really busy with the animals and everything. But now it's almost coming back into fashion, that lifestyle. It's a bit like clothes. If you hold on to them long enough, it comes back. But it keeps you, we all know when you're doing something physical and using your body and being out in nature or being, you know, doing something good for someone else, it's so rewarding, isn't it?
That's okay. Do you live in a city then, David?
Yeah, it's a fairly small one, probably a little bit less than 2 million people.
Yeah. And do you have like loads of parks there? Is it nice greenery space around you, or is it quite built up?
Well, I'm in the suburbs, so yeah, there's definitely a lot of park spaces. I mean, there's literally one down the road that way, one down the road that way, a smaller one, and then a big oval, you know, right across the road. So yeah, there's quite a few parks around.
Yeah.
It's
well, how do you think community work would benefit where you are now? What do you think? How do you think you see that playing out if we're not going to be using potentially these huge supermarkets? I just wondered if you'd.
Yeah, it's a really good question, because actually somebody messaged me on Facebook recently, and she lives in my city, and she said, like, I never heard from her before, and she said, hey, I'm looking for people to do a humanitarian project. Are you interested? And I said, yeah, I'm definitely interested in, you know, hearing what you have going on. And then she said, I'm actually, in her response, I didn't even mention anything about it, but she said, I might have some with animals too, because I love animals and I wanted to work with animals. And she was like, and then she sent, basically what she sent me was a video for Michael Tellinger, the One Small Town.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I haven't got back to her yet, but it's a good question, because I'm interested to know how that would work in a city, you know, like, would you set up a little community somewhere? And I'm really intrigued to know how it would work, because I'd imagine that if you were out in the country somewhere, it wouldn't be so much of a challenge, you know. It would be, you'd be like, okay, well, we've got all this space, we can just go set up over here, you know, depending on who owns it. And I'd really love to know how that would work. But yeah, I mean, I can get back to you on that one once I find out.
I think it's a really good idea, and isn't it lovely that someone's approached you about that and everything? It's really fantastic, isn't it? So, well, I think we're nearly, gosh, I can't believe it, we're nearly at the hour already. There is a lot changing, isn't there? There's a lot of positive things happening. It's just not in the time scale or being as publicly put across as most people would like. I think let's keep sharing. When we see these little snippets of good news, let's keep sharing it for people, because motivationally wise, it is important for people to see these little snippets of things coming out, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the One Small Town, there's quite a few different kind of community project kind of foundations that have done it quite successfully already. But yeah, it's so nice that people are sharing those kind of initial stages of bringing people together in the same area. But yeah, I'm shocked at the time. It's flown past, hasn't it? But it's so nice to hear what's happening. I suppose when we dig down under, we call it from from the UK, from the opposite side of the world. Yeah, really
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, actually, Gene Decode said that everything's inverted. So the US is actually down under, and I don't know where that means Australia is, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with when the truth comes out. You know, really where everything is, and how I would say that there's probably a lot more land that we know about. You know, and things aren't in the really with the spot that we think they are.
Yeah.
I think that's really going to happen. I keep hearing loads of troopers. Sorry, I know I'm just going, but I think this is so exciting. We've got so much more to learn. Like you said, our reality, you know, you've got is the world round or flat? Did dinosaurs really exist?
Yeah.
What really, it's so exciting. It's like, I always really liked school, and it's going to be like an eternal school, because we're going to relearn everything and rediscover everything again. And I just think that's so exciting. I really do.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
I agree.
Yeah,
but there are going to be a certain percentage of people that have massive cognitive dissonance and really won't like it at all, you know, especially in the science community.
Yes.
Unfortunately.
The very arrogant community, unfortunately. And I don't mean that in a horrible way, but it's just the way it's been set up. Is in the science community, it's really difficult for people to say I was wrong, when actually there is no right or wrong science in a lot of ways, because it's constantly evolving based on new and increased understanding. And that's where technology has helped us so much, because we can see and measure things that we just couldn't do 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, lots of exciting stuff going on, guys. David, make sure you send us the link to your YouTube channel, so your music channel.
Oh, it's the same one.
It's the same one. Okay, it's the same one. I'm going to look on that. And next time we speak, can you play some music for us? Play one of your music things for us.
Oh, like a live thing?
Yeah. Well, no, it doesn't have to be live. But you
just
can
a video.
You've got, and we can just introduce for that, because Rachel, I've heard Rachel on the piano is just absolutely out of this world.
Oh, nice.
Incredible. So you two, I'd love to have more music skills, but I haven't. I'm still waiting to discover mine.
I think we've got so many different skills in different ways, haven't we? And yeah, I think we'd all probably do quite well, Catherine, from having some of your skills for the animals, etc. I think that would be quite magical.
Are you able to talk to animals? Like, are you like an animal whisperer? Yeah.
I do a lot of animal communication. Everyone can communicate with animals, but it's so amazing. I mean, animals, trees, plants, the whole lot, because it's just incredible, David, because they are so wise and they don't get caught up in the drama.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, well, they want to.
Animals and plants. You see, tree whispering, my husband and I have been talking to the trees for years and years and years. And when you look through our family photos, it's normally one of us hugging a tree and the children saying, "Stop it, everyone's looking at you."
Yeah.
Because we're such embarrassing parents. But now again, everyone's coming out saying, yeah, the trees really have got the messages for us, and they really have. So yeah, that is what I do. And what I love is it takes the drama out of everything, and it's right back to basics and purity. And it's just wonderful to be able to listen to their wisdom.
Because I would imagine that, are you guys, obviously we've had the eclipse, you know, a few days ago, and there's another one coming up in June. Are you guys experiencing a lot of different ascension symptoms and things like that at this point?
Rachel.
We both weren't very well when on the 26th. Well, we weren't in 100% capacity, I suppose, in many ways. But yeah, no, I wasn't very well. But yeah, it was an interesting one, definitely. But I haven't seen. So there were reports of, you know, kind of full sunshine and different kind of, I don't know, rays or whatever. But I haven't really, I mean, it was the first kind of nice sunny day yesterday, because we haven't really had much warmth or sunshine here for ages, which is quite different to what it normally is. But I haven't really noticed much.
But definitely on the health side of things, we both really noticed massive, Zoe, for the last week, didn't we? And And it was really interesting because, you know, a lot of our symptoms were really similar. And my
Right.
daughter had the same sort of symptoms. And one of my amazing cats, who's on quite a few of my videos, he was really off colour and has been very different this week. I mean, he's not worryingly off colour, but just a lot of changes I've been noticing in him. So yeah, what about you? Have you been noticing a lot?
Yeah, definitely. Because the reason I asked is because we're going through an upgrade, and I was wondering if we're all going to get different abilities, and you know, maybe talking to animals will be one of those things, which would be cool because I'd love to be able to talk to animals. But yeah, I had some really, really interesting ones. So literally 2 weeks ago, Saturday, I was sitting here and I was trying to do some work. All of a sudden, like I had a bad skateboarding injury when I was 13, and that whole week I'd noticed that shoulder that was hurting. You know, I didn't break it, but it was just really painful. And I was sitting here doing some work, and all of a sudden, I noticed the shoulder, and my whole body reacted in the exact same way that it did when I injured it. So what I mean when I say that is my vision went all weird, my hearing just went all weird, and I couldn't hear very well. I hear this like noise like in my ear, like my body was in shock, I guess. Had to put my head down, and then when I was able to, you know, actually move again properly, you know, bring my head up, I went to lay down, and it just got really like a lot worse. Like the hissing just went like really loud. I heard this, what sounded like a plane fly over the house, like literally right over the top of the house. And I live nowhere near an airport. And it kind of just died down, and then it came back again, and then it died down. And then a couple of days later, the same thing happened. I kind of noticed the shoulder. I thought I was coming in I felt a bit sick. I was like, I'm going to get sick. And I was sitting here and I felt like I was levitating. I was just sitting at my desk and I was like flying or something. It was really odd. And then a couple of days later, that was the night before the eclipse, I was lying in bed. My whole body was tingling. And I felt like what I can describe as my heart, I guess it was my heart chakra, but it was just like, my heart wasn't beating fast, but it was just, I could notice it, you know, like it was there. Like I knew it was there, if that makes sense. And it's difficult for me to explain because I hadn't experienced it before. But those are the three big ones. And then ever since the first one, and I'm still hearing it now, my hearing just hasn't stopped, you know, with this high pitched noise. And it's been really crazy. So I don't know what's on the other. Hopefully I can fly, you know, so at some point.
You know, it's really funny because it's such coincidence you say that. I know we're going on, Rachel, but this is quite a coincidence because I've been having a couple of conversations with friends this last week, and they're very open-minded friends. They're completely on our wavelength. So this is a normal conversation for us, saying exactly that I think very soon Richie will be able to levitate. Now, I haven't been able to do it this week, but I just feel it's literally this far away that we will actually be able to do it. So that's a bit of a coincidence that you've had that and we've been having that conversation.
Yeah, it's so
Wouldn't that
weird.
be great? Imagine what that'll say to all the people that call us conspiracy theories when halfway through a conversation we just start floating up. It'd be brilliant, wouldn't it?
It will really crack the matrix for some people, wouldn't it? They would just like, what the hell is going on here? Like,
well, send us a video when you do it, because all seriousness. But yeah, I think a lot of people have been really feeling it. And Rachel and I were saying, didn't we, Rachel, that we felt it was a really good thing, even though we weren't feeling well. We took it as a really good sign that there were a lot of changes coming.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think astrologically and what it says in the Bible, you know, in Revelations, etc., that there are so many different and significant changes in the world at the moment that things are starting to align, you know, and I think there's plenty of evidence of that if you go looking for it.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed is that I keep having to turn down the volume of things rather than turn it up. So I don't know if that means my hearing's getting, you know,
more
better,
sensitive.
Yeah, more sensitive, and I can hear things better because I'm just like, this is too loud. Like, this is too loud. And so that's really interesting.
Oh, that's lovely.
Your senses really heighten when you have this sort of experience. That's fantastic, David.
Yeah, I can't do anything telekinetic yet, but I have had some telepathic experiences in the last couple of months, so that's interesting.
Today, I would like you to do an experiment today. go out today and find a tree that you're really drawn to.
Yeah.
And just start communicating with it. Just start to, you don't need to say it out loud, but I guarantee you're going to pick up some messages from it. I absolutely guarantee it. And let me know what you find.
I will. There's a tree out the back, big one.
Yeah, you'll be really surprised. And David, one bit of tip is it will come to you almost quicker than you've asked the question.
Okay, so just in my head, I
think you're making it up, because you'll get halfway through a question and suddenly you'll get some awareness back.
What about animals? Same thing? If I just say, because I've got a couple of cats and a dog, like if I could just go and do I just like look at them and then just try and ask them a question? Or
you can do it ever, you can do it sitting there, but just sort of try and tune into their energy, so concentrate on them. Ask their permission and say, I'd really love to have a conversation with that. Will you help me? And then literally just ask them with 100%, you know, as if it's the most normal thing you're ever doing. And then just ask them something. And before you ask it, you'll get something come into your head. Different people hear it by different things. You might hear voices, you might see something, you might feel something. All of it's fine, but just take it. Whatever comes to you and whatever of your senses it hits you, just take it. We'll have a separate session on this. It's fascinating. But you're aware is really waking up.
I'd like to ask my cat why she eats so much. I think.
Pardon?
One of my cats just can't stop eating. She's really, really slim. She just eats and eats. And I'd like to know why she eats so much. Okay,
well, we can do a separate session on that. Yeah. Well, let us know if you hear any exciting news this week, won't you? And we'll let you know.
Yeah.
I've got that on the list of questions for Janine for Wednesday. And thank you so much, both of you, for your time today.
Thank you as well.
As with you, Rachel. It's sunny here where we are in the south. So, and have a really lovely week, David, and let us know what you find.
Thank you. You too. It's great to speak to you both again.
Yay! Amazing.
Take care. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.